Kevin toted his new reality through the streets of New York like a sack of wet laundry for a couple days, trying to get used to it. His adjustment had barely taken hold when a familiar voice appeared on the other end of his cell phone. "Brother! Oh my God, can you believe it?" Daniel's exuberant, familiar voice crashed into his ear like a battering ram. How could he have forgotten it? "Daniel, this is like the Twilight Zone." "You got that right," he laughed. "But Gene is so amazing. I can't believe I finally know him." Amazing was not the first adjective Kevin would have chosen to describe his father. He was a handful. He could be ornery, selfish, reactionary. But this was Daniel, blowing everything up into an ideal and then believing it. "Decide what you want and take it as if it's already yours," he'd said long ago. His earnestness was kind of sweet, but still annoying after all these years. "Well, I guess you're stuck with him now," Kevin said. "What do you mean?" "Nothing, just a joke. You know a thing or two about trying parents, if I recall." "Well, some things just aren't meant to be." "Clearly. How's Ashira?" "Living the family life. Her husband's kind of a dick. I don't want to talk about it," he said dismissively. "That's not what this is about. Let's talk about you, me, and Gene." "What is there to say, Daniel? You were cool to me back then. Now we find out we're connected. I'm glad it's you, okay? And not some asshole." They shared the laugh, but were they laughing together? "So tell me, what was he like growing up? I want to know everything." "Well, he wasn't Mike Brady. And we're not going to get to everything on a phone call. How'd you find him anyway?" "The adoption agency will forward a request for contact to the biological parents. With Gene, it was simple. He said yes. That was all it took." "And your mom?" "She said no." "I'm sorry. She was awful young. It must be hard for her." "Well, I've got Gene. It's incredible to know your real dad. We talk about everything. He's already told me so much about you and your sister Hortense and the Sixers games he used to take you to." "Game. He took me one time, Dan." "How do your folks feel about all this?" "They're struggling with it." Kevin snorted. "Struggling? They must fucking hate me." "It's not up to them. This is my thing." Check out the Bates'em on Dan, stepping up to the rents like his baby sister tried to do all those years ago. Here we go again. Indeed, Kevin once again found himself uniquely positioned to tweak Daniel's folks. He was the gift that kept on giving. At least he wouldn't have to deal with them directly, and he remained curious about Ashira. "I'll tell you what," he continued. "I'll be down next weekend for Mom's birthday. Let's hook up for a drink. Any questions you have, I'll answer them. But we should be in the same room." "Deal," said Daniel. "McCloskey, Saturday night at 10? "You got it." That Friday, Kevin caught the Chinese bus to Philly. Despite the surrealistic bombshell, he felt oddly calm. He'd already taken in the reality of his blood tie to a long-forgotten friend. That was the easy part. Trickier was getting a handle on Daniel's expectations of their father and what that might mean for everyone. Poor son of a bitch. He knew Daniel's need for attention, even from strangers in bars. Gene, a textbook narcissist, was largely blind to such yearnings. Could he give the new son what he wanted? And if so, why the hell hadn't he given it to the old one? He arrived home in time to share a glass of wine with Hortense and their lean, energetic mother. Concealing thinning hair, her curly, burnt red wig was a bit severe, but divorce clearly agreed with Emma. She now flashed an impish grin Kevin couldn't recall seeing during childhood. Glasses drained, the women returned to the kitchen for final preparations. A triple rap at the door signaled the arrival of Gene, sweaty and lycra from his bike ride over, carrying the usual bottle of cider and a dozen wind-beaten roses for Emma's birthday. How he juggled them while steering the bike was anyone's guess. "Hey, Dad," welcomed the son, awkwardly attempting to hug his shoulders over the items balancing in his hands, which also included a bike helmet. Trim but lumpy in the tight-fitting cycling clothes, Gene leaned into the hug, inadvertently mopping perspiration from white chest hair sprouting out of his collar onto Kevin's sweatshirt. The cider was a badge of sobriety, signifying a new leaf for the former lush. "Happy birthday, Emma," he called in the direction of the kitchen. "Thank you," came the muffled response, followed by the sound of lips smacking after testing onion dip. "Be there in a minute." "Hors d'oeuvres coming up," Jean announced unnecessarily. It was ironic how Ozzie and Harriet they had all become in recent years. Emma had divested herself of Jean so thoroughly she could now tolerate his travails with detached compassion. Apparently, she'd known from the beginning he was no picnic. Hortense had told him their mom knew of the bastard child before they even married. Now, decades later, after a decathlon of suffering and acrimony, she still had room for him. My mother, the flagellant. "Good to see you, son." "Holy shit, Dad, your call freaked me out. I mean, okay, something happened when you were a teenager. I get it. It's okay. You didn't do anything to me. The whole situation is just so, yeah. The first thing that went through my head when we made the connection was, oh shit, this is going to take some explaining. But what is there to explain? It's just fate." Look at him, thought Kevin. So helpless, so powerless to take any responsibility. It all just happens to him. "Yeah, I get it. We're okay," reassured the son, irritated by his father's fragility. "You didn't really know his sister when I was dating her. It's not like you two were inviting me out for beers every weekend. Who invites their parents along for a love affair, Dad?" The women came in with a tray, and the parents shared a chaste embrace. It was good to be together. Hortense told of her thesis on Judeo-Christian architecture in Spain, where the two cultures rose and fell for centuries, inadvertently mixing together over time. "At the end of the day, what's the difference?" said Kevin. "We're all pretty much the same, whether we like it or not. We can accept each other as we are or be shitty to each other." The chateaus were back in his brain again. Emma's home decoration business had been holding its own. Jean had received a modest pay bump from the station. "They throw me a bone now and then to keep me quiet," he shrugged. The family then launched into gossipy speculation about how the chateaus were handling the news. The Ashira incident was Crabtree family legend. Her parents must be apoplectic, they guessed mischievously. Where was Ashira? What did she think? "Dad, what was it like when Daniel called?" asked Hortense. "It was like being apprehended. But when we make mistakes, and this was a big one, we kind of secretly long for comeuppance, or at least resolution." He could have hung up, but he didn't, noted Kevin with begrudging respect. The old man actually stepped up for once. "How could you turn your back on your own son?" Jean continued. "I was a little scared, but you need to be there for your kids. And whatever the circumstances, he's my kid." The warmth budding in Kevin suddenly went cold. "You weren't exactly there for us," he thought. Fucking hypocrite. "You did the right thing," commended Emma. "I'm proud of you." "Making amends for past failures," Kevin observed bitterly. By appearing out of the woodwork, was Daniel the dullard entitled to more paternal empathy than he and Hortense ever got? Since childhood, they had been craning their necks beseechingly to Jean from the floor, longing for a few scraps from his table. "He just wants to know me," Jean added modestly, as if accepting some kind of award. "He's not the only one, Dad," Kevin finally barked. "You've had several opportunities to share yourself before with us, and unfortunately you blew them all." "I know, son. I deeply regret it. It was the old rope-a-dope. Look contrite and punt the anger back to the victim. They'll either forgive you or they won't. The perpetrator can't undo the past." The women receded into the wallpaper as Kevin smoldered. There was infuriatingly little room for further complaint. Besides, passed aside, the present wasn't bad. Jean was with him tonight, wasn't he? After all, those years of friction and strife, he was still there. "To hell with this," the son proclaimed. "It's Mom's night." Everyone was grateful to raise glasses of cider and wine and change the subject. The next night, Kevin borrowed Hortense's Civic and set out for McCloskey's. With oncoming headlights splashing reflected glare across his windshield, he prepared to meet the part of himself he had known but hadn't recognized. Not an inkling. That Crabtree nose staring me in the face the whole time. In truth, Daniel had meant little to him beyond being part of the package deal for a former lover. He could have been anyone. Kevin had regarded him primarily as a strategic device, a political ally. McCloskey's was humming in low light when Kevin entered. Wending his way to the bar, he spotted his new sibling propped on a bar stool. Instantly recognizable, Daniel was now familiar in new ways as Kevin identified more Crabtree features for the first time. The slope of the shoulders, the skin coloring, the large egg-shaped head. Spotting him, Daniel smiled, and Kevin met Jean's eyes on the face of another. How could he have not noticed it before? "Yo!" greeted his new brother, also the brother of his ex. Kevin submitted to a perfunctory backslap hug. "How long has it been?" "Long enough. Couldn't have predicted the circumstances in a million years." "It isn't exactly what I was expecting either. Who the hell knew?" "So, how's your life? What do? You married?" "Can't complain. Real estate, high-end commercial. Life is good. Wife and kid." Kevin's eyebrows shot up. The eternal wingman finally pulled it off. "Nice house in Devon. Bigger than Dad's." "You mean Dad Chatov, yes. My dad's place isn't any bigger than that apartment I had in North Philly." "You mean our dad's." Kevin mulled it hastily. "Yeah, I guess that's right. It's weird. He was such a ghost when I was a kid. He's better now, but he was MIA when it mattered most. So it kind of feels like now you've got two dads and I've got none." Daniel's face turned stony. Criticism of Jean was not on his agenda. Well, no one's perfect. Dolt speaking in cliches, Kevin thought unkindly. "Look, you want to know or don't you? I understand this must all be very exciting for you, and I'm okay with it right now. But if you ask the questions, you better be prepared to hear the answers." Silence. "Look, I'm sorry," he continued. "He's all right, and he's tickled pink you showed up. I'm fine with him, too. It's just that the situation digs at a lot of weird shit. It's confusing. We've all been wondering how your dad has taken it. Man, he hated my guts." "You took it way too personally. You thought it was about you, but it was about their way of life. Get over yourself." "Way of life?" Kevin bristled. "If a butterfly had flapped its wings in the desert a few minutes later back in '62, you could have ended up with a taste of my way of life. We could have seen how you would have liked that." "How's your sister?" More stone. "Don't ask me about it, okay? She's bugged out. So's her husband. You're a sore spot." "Of course. I need a beer." The pair downed several younglings and loosened up. They reminisced, prognosticated about the Phillies, and caught up on old acquaintances. It was noisy, so they spoke in raised voices, except when commiserating about the allure of Ivy, the tube-topped bartender with the eye patch. Kevin engaged gamely, but the evening wore him down, as it used to in the old days. He'd forgotten the numbing effect of Daniel's jackhammer cadence. "Selling space is not rocket science. There's a need for what I sell. What it takes is balls, baits 'em, no prisoners. It's like hunting. When you get your shot, you take it without hesitation." Feigning interest, Kevin resisted rolling his eyes. "God, I don't care," he wanted to scream. "Kill me now." He felt ashamed of his intolerance, so reminiscent of his father. There was plenty to learn from others if he could just open his mind and heart a little. But the doors to both felt sealed shut. Judgmental prick. I'm such a bastard.